The marvellous medicine was so fantastic that George and his father went straight back indoors to make some more. The new mixture looked and smelt just as powerful as the first lot, but just to make sure, George took a spoonful out into the farmyard to try it out on one of the chickens. "Come on, chicken," he said. "Good chicken. Chick, 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 chick." A white chicken with black specks on the feathers walked over to the spoon and went, "Peck." The effect that medicine number 2 had on this chicken was not quite the same as the effect produced by medicine number 1, but it was very interesting. "Row!" shrieked the chicken, and it shot 6 feet up in the air and came down again. Then sparks came flying out of its beak, bright yellow sparks of fire, as though someone was sharpening a knife on a grindstone inside its tummy. Then its legs began to grow longer. Its body stayed the same size, but the 2 thin yellow legs got longer and longer and longer. "What's happening to it?" cried Mr. Killicranky. "Something's wrong," said George. The chicken looked perfectly absurd, with its long, long legs and its ordinary little body perched high up on top. It was like a chicken on stilts. "Oh, my sainted aunts!" cried Mr. Killicranky. "This chicken's no good to anybody. It's all legs. No one wants chicken's legs." "Well, I must have left something out," George said. "I know you've left something out," cried Mr. Cranky. "Think, boy, think. What was it you left out?" "I've got it," said George. "Flea powder for dogs. And I used some brown shoe polish, too." Mr. Cranky was already running to his car, and soon he was heading down to the village to buy more flea powder and more shoe polish. When he got back, George poured the flea powder into the giant saucepan, then he scooped the shoe polish out of its tin and added that as well. This was marvellous medicine number 3. George boiled it and stirred it just as before, then he took a spoonful of it out into the yard to try on another chicken. Mr. Cranky ran after him, flapping his arms and hopping with excitement. "Come and watch this one," he called out to Mrs. Cranky. "Come and watch us turning an ordinary chicken into a lovely great big one that lays eggs as large as footballs." "I hope you do better than you did last time," said Mrs. Cranky. "Come on, chicken," said George. "Chick, chick, 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 chick. Have some of the lovely medicine." And a magnificent black cockerel with a scarlet comb came stepping over. The cockerel looked at the spoon and went, "Peck!" Then, "Ah, ah, ah, ah!" George and his father and mother watched as the cockerel shot up into the air and came back down again. "Watch him now," cried Mr. Cranky. "Watch him grow. Any moment he's going to start getting bigger and bigger." The cockerel stood quite still. It looked as though it had a headache. "What's happening to its neck?" Mrs. Cranky asked. "It's getting longer," said George. "I'll say it's getting longer," said Mrs. Cranky. "Last time it was the legs, now it's the neck. Who wants a chicken with a long neck? You can't eat a chicken's neck." It was an extraordinary sight. The cockerel's body hadn't grown at all, but the neck was now about 6 feet long. "All right, George," said Mr. Cranky. "What else have you forgotten?" "I don't know," said George. "Oh, yes, you do," said Mr. Cranky. "Come along now, boy. Think. There's probably just one vital thing missing, and you've got to remember it." I put in some engine oil from the shed," said George. "Did you have that on your list?" "Eureka!" cried Mr. Cranky. "That's the answer. Right, how much did you put in?" "Half a pint," George said. "You're going to have some mighty queer chickens around here if you go on like this," said Mrs. Cranky, as they boiled up marvellous medicine number 4. "You keep out of this," said Mr. Cranky. "We're doing fine. We've got it this time. You see if we haven't." George took a teacup full of the new medicine outside, dipped in the spoon, and held it out to a brown hen. "Chick, chick, chick," he said. "Try some of this." The brown hen walked over and looked at the spoon. Then it went, "Peck!" "Ouch," it said. And then a funny whistling noise came out of its beak. "Watch it grow," shouted Mr. Cranky. "Don't be too sure," said Mrs. Cranky. "Why is it whistling like that?" "Keep quiet, woman," cried Mr. Cranky. "Give it a chance." "It's getting smaller," said George. "Look at it, Dad, it's shrinking." And indeed it was. In less than a minute, the hen was no bigger than a new hatched chick. It looked ridiculous. "Oh, give it up," said Mrs. Cranky. "Pack it in. You'll never get it right." And at that point, Grandma came striding into the yard. From her enormous height, she glared down at the three people below her, and she shouted, "What's going on around here? Why hasn't anybody brought me my morning cup of tea? It's bad enough having to sleep in the barn with the rats and the mice, but I'll be blowed if I'm going to starve as well. No tea, no eggs and bacon, no buttered toast." "Oh, I'm sorry, Mother," Mrs. Cranky said. "We've been terribly busy. I'll get you something right away." "Let George get it, the lazy little brute," Grandma shouted. Just then, the old woman spotted the cup in George's hand. She bent down and peered into it, and she saw that it was full of brown liquid. It looked very much like tea. "Ho, ho!" she cried. "Ha, ha! So that's your little game, is it? You look after yourself, all right, then."